Poison as a status condition has never seen competitive success in the official Pokemon tournament circuit. But why is that? We've seen other status conditions like sleep, burn, paralysis, and even confusion have absolutely dominant success throughout the history of competitive Pokemon. Why is it that poison is the only one that hasn't had any success? And why is it that suddenly, with Scarlet and Violet, poison is so good? Well, that's what we're going to look at in today's video. So, I'll start off here with the most recent major official tournament, the San Diego Regionals, which featured over 500 competitors and numerous players from around the world. Some of the best players from all over traveled here, so this was an absolutely stacked tournament. So if I scroll down to the list of teams, the top teams from this tournament, you can see here in 5th place we have Glimmora. So Glimmora, one of the new Pokemon introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And Emilio here went 10-0 in Swiss, so undefeated until the top 8 match of the single elimination portion in day 2 of the tournament. Emilio managed to go undefeated, so having perhaps the best record in the entire tournament. Now, because of the tournament structure, that wasn't enough to get first place because Gisak here had a better performance in the single elimination portion of the tournament. But we cannot discredit at all this 10-0 Swiss performance and then making it all the way to the top 8. That is an incredible performance. And so I think we should be paying particular attention to this team right here, which made it that far in the tournament. So Glimmora, a Pokemon that we really don't see. It's very underused. It's not usually considered one of the strongest Pokemon. On Pokemon Showdown, I believe it's only on like 1% of all teams. So very low usage despite what seems to be a pretty high power level, which I'm going to talk about here. And it's not just Glimmora. I'm going to talk more about other poison strategies in a bit, but we're going to start off with Glimmora because that is the major one that is appearing on so many successful teams right now. So the thing with Glimmora, right, the very unique niche that it has is its ability. So it's able to set layers of toxic spikes whenever it's hit by a physical move. So the thing is, throughout competitive Pokemon's history, setting up, toxic spikes or poisoning your opponent outright with moves like Toxic, it's just too slow. You're spending too many turns to set that up. And in a fast-paced doubles environment, it's just not strong enough. So Poison has really never seen any kind of success whatsoever outside of very niche scenarios, things like, being able to hit Shedinja with a move to KO it, right? Those are the times where we've really seen Poison at all have any kind of success. So seeing it in Scarlet and Violet have this level of success is kind of unprecedented, and that's why I wanted to talk about it in the video today. So here's the San Diego Regional. We have Glimmora with an insane performance by Emilio. So now if I pull up the top 30 teams from the online ranked ladder in the very first season of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we can see here 1 Glimmora, 2 Glimmora, 3 Glimmora, 4 Glimmora in the top 30. So that's way more than the 1% usage on Showdown would indicate as to this Pokemon's power level. So Glimmora, clearly a very strong Pokemon that is able to provide a very unique element to a team, and one that we really haven't seen, up until this point throughout competitive Pokemon's history. So, but this isn't just a video about Glimmora, and so I want to talk briefly about another strategy that's being used in order to win games via poison. So the next is Meowscarada. So here on the first place team, and I talked about this in my video about this the other day, but former world champion Naoto Mizoguchi finished first place on the online ranked ladder with Toxic Spikes Meowscarada. So unlike Glimmora, which just sets up Toxic Spikes just by being hit with physical moves, Glimmora doesn't have to spend a turn actually setting up poison, which is what makes it so good. Here we have Meowscarada, a very offensive Pokemon normally, actually being used to set up Toxic Spikes. So very unique adaptation here that is really starting to pick up in popularity over in Japan. We haven't really seen it in the West as much yet, but this is something that we might start to see more of as the metagame progresses. So now back to Why are we seeing poison pop up as much as it is in Scarlet and Violet right now? What is it that is making poison so good? So we know why things like sleep, burn, paralysis, even confusion, we know why they've been good, right? Sleep, being able to immobilize opponents for multiple turns is just downright game winning. Paralysis, being able to cut the opponent's speed in half, as a form of speed control is extremely strong. Not to mention the 25% chance of just not even being able to move. Thunder Wave has long been a staple of competitive Pokemon. It's even been nerfed pretty harshly, really, over the generations. Burn, being able to completely neuter any physical attacker is extremely strong, and we've seen Will-O-Wisp it just determines games sometimes. Even just missing a Will-O-Wisp can single-handedly lose you a game, and we've seen that over the years. And even confusion, being able to, in the past it was a 50% chance to immobilize your opponent and even have them damage themselves, but you could also use Swagger to boost your ally's attack if it was holding something like a Lumberry. So you could boost your own ally using a move like Swagger. So all these status conditions have seen numerous amounts of success throughout the years in competitive Pokemon, and even to this day, a lot of them still see massive amounts of play. But the thing with poison is, all it's doing is just slowly, gradually draining the HP of your opponent. It doesn't have any kind of effect where it's lowering your opponent's stats, doesn't have any kind of effect where it's boosting your own stats or your own ally's stats, and it doesn't have any kind of effect where it's immobilizing an opponent. So it's easy to see why poison has never really been able to see any kind of success as a strategy in terms of the status condition in competitive Pokemon's history for the official Pokemon circuit. So why is it that poison is suddenly so good now? Well, the reason, and I'll call it a big reason, so if we look at these teams that featured Glimmora and Toxic Spike's Meowscarada, you might start to notice a very big thing in common. We've got Dondozo Tatsugiri on this Glimmora team. On the first place Meowscarada with Toxic Spike's team, again, Dondozo Tatsugiri. Another Glimmora. Well, there's another Dondozo Tatsugiri. Another Glimmora. Wouldn't you know, another Dondozo. Another Glimmora. Another Dondozo. Another Glimmora. Another Dondozo. So clearly the theme here is that Glimmora pairs so well with Dondozo. Now that starts to make sense when you think about it, because Dondozo, even if you're able to neuter it, whether it's cycling in Intimidates, whether it's Haze, whether it's Clear Smog, even if you're able to neuter it with one of those strategies, it's still able to sit on the field for so many turns. It's just so bulky, such high HP, such high defenses. It's just so hard to take down, especially when you factor in leftovers, protect. It's just on the field for such a long time. So if you're able to set up, any kind of toxic spikes or poison in general, some Glimmoras even carry Mortal Spin to poison opponents outright. If you're able to set up poison damage, Dondozo can just sit there, stall, and that poison damage can really start to add up. So that's one reason that we see, poison being used as a strategy so much. It's because it pairs so well with Dondozo. It's so bulky, so hard to take down, and is on the field forever, allowing that residual damage to stack up. But there's one more reason, right? If it was as simple as that, well, that makes sense. But there's one more that you wouldn't really catch on to if you were just to look at the teams here. And that reason is that poison is a counter to Dondozo. Dondozo is a Pokemon, once it eats up Tatsugiri, it can't switch out, so it's stuck in there. So if you're able to poison it, as I mentioned before, as a reason it pairs so well with poison, is that Dondozo's on the field for so long. Even if you are able to neuter, it's just going to sit there on the field, just taking up numerous turns to eventually KO. So if you're able to poison it, all that time Dondozo's spending on the field is just adding up poison damage against itself. And not only itself, also against Tatsugiri, which is going to be sitting there doing nothing, just slowly losing all its HP. And it's not like any, serious Dondozo teams have Flamigo there, which is able to come in once Tatsugiri faints and get all those boosts or anything. So you're able to pick up 2 KOs, just setting up poison against Dondozo if you're able to stall out Dondozo, because it is still such a big offensive threat. But if you're able to neuter it and stall it out, then that's 2 free KOs there just thanks to setting up a single layer even of toxic spikes. So that's why we're seeing poison being used as much as it is, and it's something that, you know, the Dondozo interaction is something we haven't seen a mechanic like this in Pokemon before. And so I think the introduction of this Dondozo mechanic combined with this introduction of Glimmera's mechanic, which we also haven't seen anything like before, the combination of the two of them, they just pair so well against each other, but then also pair so well as a counter to each other. So that really interesting to think about. I think it'll be very cool to see how this kind of, you know, metagame advances, right? Will we start to see more Glimmeras or even Toxic Spikes Meowscaradas on teams that don't have Dondozo? Well, in the case of Toxic Spikes Meowscarada, maybe not, because there are still a lot of other good moves to choose from on Meowscarada, but Glimmera is still such a really good Pokemon. It's got amazing special attack, its HP, defenses, even speed, they're all solid, right? They're all like around the 80 or 90 mark. So Glimmera is a very strong Pokemon, and typing-wise, I mean, we've seen Nihilego, which has the same typing, be such, you know, an absolute unit in previous formats, dishing out major damage. Now, Glimmera, of course, doesn't have the speed Nihilego has, but, I mean, Glimmera is still an incredibly powerful Pokemon, very nice moveset, too. It gets very nice coverage, so Glimmera, overall, very solid Pokemon, and Poison is something in general that players, I think, need to think a little bit more of as we progress through the metagame, because it is such a great counter to Dondozo, and if you're using Dondozo yourself, well, maybe considering moves like Rest, items like Lumberry on Tatsugiri, both of these adaptations have actually started to rise on a lot of these top teams over in Japan, where Poison has become a much more common metagame threat than over in the West. So it'll be interesting to see. How does Poison, you know, does it come over to the West more? We've seen Emilio finish 10-0 in Swiss and then make it to the top 8 in day 2 of this regional. So clearly, Glimmera very underplayed in the West, and, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more players over in the West start to take notice of teams like Emilio brought, and we start to see more Glimmeras pop up, whether paired with Dondozo or not. So that's going to do it for the video today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope it was informative. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think about Poison and Glimmera specifically? And subscribe if you're not already, and I'll catch you in the next video.